I welcome you to the Top 10 channel. Subscribe to the channel, put a like, and we start the next top. Top 10 Murderous Wives Ever. Throughout history, there have been many women who have murdered their husbands or partners. Motives have ranged from rage, jealousy, hate, and greed. These women are often labeled black widows by the media. In this list, we look at the murderous actions of 10 black widows. Chisako Kakehi. Before being apprehended, Chisako Kakehi, a Japanese lady, murdered at least 4 men, all of whom were her husbands. Kakehi, called the Black Widow by Japanese media, used numerous dating websites to find her victims. Her requirements were consistent. They had to be wealthy, childless, elderly, and lonely. She would draw them in and then poison them with cyanide, either in their drinks or in prescription pills. Her goal in carrying out these murders was to collect the insurance money. She was able to collect $12 million in insurance and inheritance payments, but due to poor investing decisions, she ended up in debt. In 2017, Kakehi was eventually arrested after the death of her 4th husband, only after a single month of marriage. She confessed to the crime, saying she killed him because he gave money to other women, but never any to her. She was sentenced to death. Evelyn Dick. Evelyn Dick's case, dubbed the Torso Murderer, is one of the most sensationalized in Canadian criminal history. In 1944, a group of schoolchildren discovered the torso of Evelyn's missing husband, John Dick, a streetcar driver, while wandering in the woods. His head and arms were missing, and it was later revealed that they had been burned in their home's furnace. Evelyn was the target of suspicion. In 1946, she was found guilty of his murder and put to death by hanging. Her counsel filed an appeal, and she was found not guilty. However, in a shocking turn of events, Evelyn Dick's baby boy was found encased in cement under the floorboards of her home. This had her right back in court, charged for murder again. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison and was released in 1958. No one knows what came of this murderess after her release with a new identity and parole and case record sealed by essentially a royal pardon. Betty Lou Beets. Betty Lou Beets had 6 marriages, 2 of which were to the same guy. She tried to assassinate 2 of them. She began by shooting Bill Lane twice in the back of the head. After that, they divorced, remarried, and then divorced again. She then attempted to run over Ronnie Threlkeld, her 3rd husband, with her automobile. Both of these individuals would go on to testify against her during her murder trial. In 1983, Beets reported her 6th husband, Jimmy Don Beets, missing. However, it was later discovered that she told her son, Robert Branson, to leave the house as she intended to murder Jimmy. Rob was then asked to help conceal the murder by hiding the body in the front yard and planting Jimmy's heart medication on his boat before abandoning the boat in a lake. This was done so it would appear that Jimmy had fallen overboard and drowned. The lake was dragged, with Jimmy's body not being discovered. After a search warrant was issued, the bodies of Jimmy as well as Doyle Wayne Barker, who was another former husband of Beets's, were found on her property. She was arrested and later sentenced to death by lethal injection. Texas carried out her execution on February 24, 2000. Stacey Castor. Stacey Castor was dubbed the Black Widow after murdering her then-husband, David Castor, in 2005. She poisoned him with antifreeze, an odorless and colorless poison. She also attempted to murder her daughter, Ashley Wallace, by mixing pills into her drink in 2007. Stacey was also suspected of murdering her 1st husband, Michael Wallace, after his body was exhumed and traces of antifreeze crystals found when examined. The coroner first ruled that David Castor committed suicide by consuming antifreeze. Stacey Castor's fingerprints, on the other hand, were located on the antifreeze container, and a turkey baster was recovered in the trash. It was suspected that she used the turkey baster to force-feed the antifreeze to her spouse. Castor was sentenced to 51 years in jail in 2009 after being convicted of murder and attempted murder. In 2016, she died of a heart attack in prison. Belle Gunness. Belle Gunness would entice suitors to her Indiana farm with promises of marriage and hospitality before brutally murdering them. Her heinous deeds were revealed after her house burned down, trapping her and her children within. Authorities discovered a number of soft depressions in the ground during their inspection of the Gunness farm. A bag of human bones was discovered after digging. Upon closer examination, dozens of these ground depressions were discovered, each carrying a sack of human bones. The cops reportedly stopped counting after unearthing 5 bags on the first day of digging and 6 on the second. Although the actual number of persons slain by Belle Gunness is unknown, it is thought that she may have killed up to 40 people. Despite the fact that she was reported dead in the house fire, it is believed that she escaped the flames, as occasional sightings of her in the Chicago region were recorded long after her presumed death. Mary Ann Cotton. Mary Ann Cotton was an Englishwoman suspected of murdering 3 of her 4 husbands to collect their insurance policies. She carried out these murders through arsenic poisoning. Each of her then husbands fell ill with gastric issues, and with each of them eventually passing away, she would then collect money from their policies. Her undoing didn't come until the death of her stepson, Charles Edward Cotton, a frail child. She testified after his death that she had tried to help the sick boy by administering arrowroot. When the newspapers learned that Mary Ann had lost 3 husbands, a lover, and 11 children all because of stomach problems, the gig had come to an end. Traces of arsenic were discovered after an examination of Charles's body, prompting Mary's imprisonment. In 1873, she was found guilty and hung. Nanny Doss. Nanny Doss, or the self-made widow, was an American serial killer who murdered 4 husbands, 2 children, her sister, her mother, 2 grandsons, and a mother-in-law. Even after all these deaths, she was sometimes referred to as the giggling granny. She was first married at the age of 16 to a co-worker by the name of Charlie Braggs, and they had 4 children together, 2 of which died from suspected food poisoning. The marriage ended in divorce. She very quickly married Robert Franklin Harrelson, a marriage that lasted 16 years until she poisoned him with rat poison after he raped her. Her later marriages included Arlie Lanning, who died from a suspected heart attack, and Richard Morton, who she poisoned. Though before she poisoned him, she poisoned her own mother. After murdering her 4th husband, Samuel Doss, her reign of terror came to an end. She was detained after an autopsy revealed high levels of arsenic in his system. She was given a life sentence and died of leukemia in jail in 1965. Amy Duggan Archer Gilligan. Amy Duggan, sister, Archer Gilligan worked at the Archer Home for the Elderly and Infirm, which was established by Amy's husband, James Archer. Unfortunately, James Archer died as a result of Bright's disease, a genetic illness that was then attributed to kidney ailments. Amy had taken out a life insurance policy on her husband only a few weeks before he died. She was able to keep the Archer home running as a result of this. She later married Michael W. Gilligan, who died of severe gastritis after only 3 months of marriage. Over the years, there were many deaths at the Archer nursing home. Between 1911 and 1916, 48 residents died, including Franklin R. Andrews. Andrews' family, including his sister Nellie Pierce, grew suspicious of these events. She went to the media about it, which resulted in several articles on the deaths being published. Amy, on the other hand, was not arrested until a year later. Exhumations of the bodies of several of the Archer home inhabitants revealed that they died of arsenic or strychnine poisoning. Amy was apprehended and sentenced to death at first. Amy later claimed insanity and was committed to a mental institution for the rest of her life. Betty Broderick. Elizabeth Ann Broderick, or simply Betty, killed her ex-husband and his second wife while they slept in their home. Betty's divorce from her ex-husband, Daniel T. Broderick III, was very public. The Broderick vs. Broderick case became one of the most infamous divorce cases in the U.S., Link 12. This was primarily because Betty worked to put her then-husband through postgraduate school so that he could become a lawyer. Daniel married Linda Kolkina, his legal assistant, after the divorce, and later acknowledged to having an affair with her while still married to Betty. Betty became enraged, leaving threatening voicemails on Daniel's phone and surprising gifts for Linda on her wedding day. On the night of Sunday, November 5, 1989, Betty broke into Daniel's and Linda's home, killing them while they slept. She shot Linda first, killing her instantly, and afterward shot Daniel as he was reaching for the phone. Daniel did not die instantly, and later, Betty admitted talking to him as he lay dying. Betty was convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 32 years in prison. She remains incarcerated in California after parole hearings in 2010 and 2017 did not grant her release. Her next parole hearing is scheduled for 2032. Susan Wright. Susan Wright tied her husband, Jeff Wright, to their bed and stabbed him a total of 193 times with 2 different kinds of knives. She later buried him in the backyard and painted the bedroom to try and hide evidence. She later confessed to her attorney, citing that she killed her husband in self-defense. During her trial, Susan testified that her husband was abusive and, on the night of his murder, high on cocaine. She killed him to protect both herself and their 2 children from his drug-fueled rage. However, the prosecutor painted a different picture of the situation, citing that Susan wished to collect the $200,000 in life insurance money. She was convicted of murder in 2005 and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. A re-sentencing appeal lowered her sentence to 20 years in 2010 based on witness testimony about Susan's husband's abusive behavior. In December 2020, she was granted parole and released from incarceration. Subscribe to the channel and like it. There are still many interesting stories ahead.